Welcome to another episode of your WCPO High School Insider Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Dyer. Pleased to be joined by Elder head football coach Doug Ramsey and St. Xavier head football coach Steve Specht. The 100th meeting between the Elder and St. X football programs will occur on Friday night at Ballaban Field at 7 p.m. St. X Athletic Department is anticipating a sellout of 7,500 people, and certainly going to be a much anticipated GCL South matchup between 4-1 Elder and 5-0 St. Xavier. As always, this High School Insider Podcast is presented by our local Chick-fil-A restaurants, where the winning play is always chicken. Download the app today for extra points. And as always, you can get this WCPO High School Insider Podcast on Google Play, Stitcher, and Apple Podcasts. And I want to welcome in Coach Specht and Coach Ramsey to the podcast. Guys, how are you?
Thanks, Mike.
Yep, good, Mike. How you doing?
Doing well. Hey, just want to ask, 100th meeting. I know you guys have a task at hand. You're not going to be caught up in the sentimental moment of this Friday night, but certainly this is one of the most renowned football rivalries in the area, in Southwest Ohio, and really in the entire state. How momentous is this to say both these programs have been playing for 100 games now this Friday night? I'll begin with you, Steve.
Well, I think it's a testament to not only Elder High School, St. Xavier High School, but the culture, the fabric of high school football in the city of Cincinnati and in Southwest Ohio. Well, it matters. It always has mattered. The game and Friday night lights, and when you're growing up as a young guy, you're painting your face purple, you're painting your face blue, and you're dreaming of the days you get to play in a game like this. And to think, Mike, that this has been going on for 100 years. I mean, you put that in wow. It is important, and what a neat rivalry.
Doug, you've been at this for 23 years. What is your favorite game in this rivalry?
Oh, I don't know. There's been a lot of really good games, and I think that's the thing. Steve said, this matters so much to so many people. It's just so important. Not crazy important, but important in that, people support the kids and people are here supporting the schools and to think that, we've done this now, 99 times going on to time number 100, and people still really get into this and will enjoy this. 7,500 people will be there. The game's going to be on TV as well. I mean, so many people will have their eyeballs on this, and that's what makes it so great. You just think about the games we've had in the past, whether it's here or whether it's there. Whether it's been at Nippert Stadium, wherever it's been, it's always been such a great atmosphere to play high school games.
Steve, do you have a favorite game in this series?
No, I'd have to echo what Doug just said. I don't think I never like to pick one game over another because they all matter. They're different kids that are playing so hard. So, it's tough to pick just one because there's been so many great games played.
It's hard to believe it's only been one OT game, that 04 game that went to double overtime.
Is that the only one? We played a few.
Was there a few more? I had 4 playoff games, at least in the all-time series, only one OT game in 04. But maybe if you can recall others, I'd be certainly to.
I think Doug will echo this. We went to overtime at St. X, and Doug, correct me if I'm wrong here, but we went to double overtime when Peyton was, I think, a junior. Okay. And I'm not, Mike, we had him, we thought the game was over. We had him on I think it was a 4th down play. We had him sacked, and we're all excited. And then Peyton did that thing he does, right? He spins around and runs around and throws a seed for a touchdown, and we ended up losing the game. And I think it was over. Wasn't that overtime, Doug?
It was overtime because actually that was a brilliant call on my part that we went for 2 after we scored, and then Peyton makes a play, but we get called for about 27 different penalties because he ran around forever. And then we had to kick a 35-yard extra point into driving wind and rain, and so Mike Riga hit it, and we were able to win in overtime. But yeah, we've had a couple of overtime games.
Well, there you go. My mistake turned into some interesting discussion there. So good stuff. Steve, you grew up in Green Township. I know there was a story. I mean, you wore purple when you were a kid. Tell me about that growing up really in Elder country there on the west side.
Yeah, my father, God rest his soul, he was a dentist on the west side. His practice was right by Western Hills football field. on Ferguson Place, and Dad was deeply embedded in the elder community. He was deeply embedded as an elder athletic booster. I still like going down. He's got his name on a plaque down by the pit. When we go and play, I always try to go and take a look at it. But my brother was an 80 grad of Elder High School, and I was born and raised wearing purple and going to the games. And I try to think of how I ended up going to St. Xavier High School. And my grade school baseball coach, Chuck Mentrup, was a big X guy at the time, and I know Chuck was really pushing hard. And my mother was really instrumental in pushing me to go to St. Xavier High School for whatever reason. But, my brother's incredibly successful as he's a pharmacist, and I've had some luck in my career at St. X. So you're talking about two great institutions, the same type of kids. It's just, again, it adds to the rivalry and what makes it so neat.
Steve, you've been at this for 16 years as a head coach. Doug, 23 years as a head coach, as I mentioned earlier. I know you've coached in big games, probably no games phase you. You've been in state championship games, the biggest environments, the loudest crowds. But still, what's it like just coaching in a GCL South game? It's got to add another level to your competitiveness. And now as you get older, do you see it from a different perspective, like how, maybe I should have done something different, or I view it differently now that, obviously your kids are for the most part, obviously, Doug, you still have Drew there at Elder, but your kids are older, and different life experiences obviously would affect your perspective. Doug, tell me about that, how you kind of relate to these games now as you maybe opposed to 10 to 15 years ago.
I'm probably not as psychotic about the games today. I think I try to enjoy it a little bit more than I used to. I think that is the perspective of, sometimes as a coach, you go through and you have expectations of kids, and then when you got the opportunity to coach your own kids, and then you kind of view things as a father a little bit more, and so I think it changes you because obviously we all do this to win. We're that's the object of the game, but in the end, it's not the end all. What can we do for kids, and what kind of experiences can we have for kids, I think is what's really important. In games like this, I think really bring that out, that this is an opportunity to showcase your talents and your abilities and play in something that's meaningful and fun, and just go out and give it everything you got. And you're right about, we played some good teams so far, but there's not the same feeling in those games as there is when you line up against X or Moeller or LaSalle. Just being in a GCL game, and I think for us the X game is really big because, and I'm sure it's the same way for Steve and the X people, is that so many people from X and Elder know each other. So many of the kids know each other that it just makes it that much more exciting, that much more fun.
Steve, I should probably go to Hayden and Cameron for maybe this question too, but how have you changed in terms of maybe viewing these types of games when you talk about GCL South play?
I agree with Doug. It's all about perspective. I think the older you get, you start to see things much more clearly. With age comes wisdom. And although you compete as hard as you can and you want to win, I think there's a reason we've stayed at the high school level. There's a reason we coach kids. It's still pure here for the most part. We have a chance to impact lives. I know the coaches that I had in my life made such a profound impact on me that I wanted to come back and do what they did. And so you get older, and like Doug said, you coach your kids. And that is the single greatest experience I've had as a coach was the opportunity to coach my two boys. And I watched Drew lining up and playing, and I remember, I was like, God, that is so much fun. It's so exciting to coach your kids. That adds another element to why we're doing this. It mellows you. I'd like to say my coaching staff would probably disagree, but I think I have mellowed over the years. I do look at things from a kid perspective a lot more than I did from a wins and losses deal. It's about developing, and regardless of what happens Friday night, you want your kids to compete their tails off and be the best they can be, and God sorts the rest out. We're just conduits to help these kids develop life skills. And so I'd like to think I'm a little more tempered, Mike, and I think I get it a little more now.
Just to piggyback on that, Steve, you told me this summer this was the most fun you've had in the preseason. in maybe your entire coaching tenure there as a head coach there with the Bombers. Tell me what you like most, kind of get into specifics here about your team, but what you like most about this group right now at 5-0.
Well, they compete. They play hard. We're young. We're inexperienced, young and inexperienced at a lot of spots. And I think that was the enjoyment and what I found life-giving in camp was, you're working with kids that don't know what they don't know yet. And you're trying to mold them and trying to see what their strengths are and hone your coaching to their strengths. But they care and they have fun and they're in it for all the right reasons. Mike, the kids we have lining up every day, they want to wear the Bomber blue. They want to compete against Elder High School on Friday night because they get it. This is high school football, and these kids honestly have a passion for high school football, and that is so refreshing. In the day and age of all these 5 stars and the heck with that. We're talking about kids, and these kids none of them care about stars. They care about playing high school football and just being with their teammates and enjoying the experience and getting better. And that's been so life-giving for me and personally as a coach.
I know we could talk a lot about your players on both sides of the ball, Steve. Obviously, we're talking about 2 of the top offenses in the GCL South coming into this game. But your senior quarterback, Matthew Reevy, has thrown for already over 1,300 yards passing. Obviously, some excellent targets when you talk about tight end Marshall Lane going to Northwestern, and then your outstanding junior, Liam Clifford. Just talk about the way the offense has flowed recently and what you guys are doing so well there on that side of the ball.
Well, I had an opportunity over the winter to hire Andrew Coverdale, a very good friend of mine, as our offensive coordinator. So we have an entirely new system, and I've watched Matthew's growth, his development through the system. Andrew's a tremendous teacher, just a really, really sound, fundamental guy. And Matthew has worked so hard, worked in the off season. He studies the game, and to see him develop the way he has been really satisfying. As a high school teacher and coach, but he has some weapons. You named them. Liam Clifford's a very talented junior wide receiver. He has a very bright future ahead of him. Obviously, Marshall Lang has been having a great year as well. And we're developing. Last week though, you look at it, Mike, our left side of our line, we started a sophomore left tackle, a sophomore left guard, and a sophomore center. So again, I get back to they don't know what they don't know. And then you're going to throw them into an elder game. You get to see how they react, and that's so. We've been fortunate this year. He's spreading the ball around, and they're doing a real nice job offensively.
Doug, everybody talks about your offensive line there, obviously, and for good reason. But certainly, you're talking about. I was out there at practice talking to Connor Keys on defense, and has a great story of perseverance. But just Matthew Luby there, a senior quarterback, already over 1,000 yards passing, 11 touchdowns. Obviously, he's gotten the ball to Joe Royer quite a bit, and that's been really successful for you. But tell us about your offense and what the strength of that is right now.
Well, we know we're pretty good up front on the offensive line. Our left side of our offensive line is, you got Jacob James going to Ohio State, and you got Luke Kandra being a Louisville guy, and so we've got some guys up front, but also it's just not that. We've got some decent weapons. Matthew's had a great season for us. He played some slot receiver for us last year, and really I think learned from his experience. And it's just kind of picked up from that, last year, and he's throwing the ball well for us. He's second in the league in passing. He's leading the league in rushing. He's one of those guys that you better account for, or he's going to give you a hard time. And and then receivers, having Joe Royer there obviously is big. His ability to go up and catch the ball. He's a great competitor. So you got him and Evan Vollmer, senior receiver's done a really good job for us this year, and Drew's playing and doing some good things. Dakota Postwhite, a wide receiver, is a really good blocker, and when he gets the opportunity to catch the ball, he does. And we're using a couple backs and Joseph Catania and Cooper Johnson, and I think the thing is we've got enough guys that are making plays that you watch our guys run. You watch our guys block downfield. They do it, and they do it hard because they know if they don't, somebody's going to play more minutes than them. And I think having competition like that on one side of the ball is really good because there's always that threat that somebody's going to come and take your job from you.
Steve, you always are defensive-minded. I know you want to get maybe a few plugs in here for a couple of your guys on defense. So who's playing well for you on that side of the ball?
Well, we've had, the past couple of weeks have been a little rougher on our defense. We're trying to work a few things out defensively, but I think our linebacking core has done a real nice job this year. We've returned 2 senior starters in Noah Taylor and TJ O'Malley, who are having solid years. Tucker Hunley, our strong safety, is having a really, really fine year. I mean, I could go on and on about the guys that are playing well, but we were trying to work a few things out right now. Fortunately, we had a good second half last week, but we had a rough first half. And you don't have time. You don't have a lot of time to work things out with our schedule, and especially going up against Coach Ramsey's offense. Man, your kids have to get better real fast, and that's what we're focused on this week, is trying to get better real fast.
Final thought for Doug, too. I saw St. Ed's obviously defeated Winton Woods this past weekend, and obviously you had to travel up to Northeast Ohio, but how proud were you of the way you guys replied or responded against Ryle last week?
It was good, I think the thing that probably pleased me the most wasn't the game. It was last Tuesday in practice, our first day really getting after it again after a loss. It was probably the best practice we had all season. Guys were focused and ready. They know we went up and we played. We did some good things up there, but we weren't at our best. And I think our guys, learned a lot from that experience and came out Friday and we took care of business and did the things that we should have. We talked about being physical and coming out and taking control of the game early. Don't give them a chance to think they can play with you. And, and all the things that we laid out for our guys to do, we did a really good job of.
Elder Coach Doug Ramsey, St. Xavier Coach Steve Specht. Guys, thanks for joining me on the WCPO High School Insider Podcast, and good luck on Friday night.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, guys. And I want to remind everybody this High School Insider Podcast is presented by our local Chick-fil-A restaurants, where the winning play is always chicken. Go for the extra point today with a side of their new macaroni and cheese. And you just heard from Elder Coach Doug Ramsey and St. X Coach Steve Specht. And talking about this game, it is going to be much anticipated. There's going to be a lot of media there on Friday night. Elder leads the all-time series 51-42. And 6, and the series started in 1923. I was mistaken, as I mentioned earlier, only one overtime game, but that was must have had some records that were did not denote the OT games there. But 4 playoff games, 2-2 all-time series in the postseason. Game wasn't played in 1929, and talk about 2 coaches who have really been established in the greater Cincinnati football community over so many years now. 23 years at head coach for Doug Ramsey and 16 seasons for Steve Specht. Steve's won 3 state titles, 2005 and 07, also 2016, and then Doug Ramsey, obviously the back-to-backs, 02 and 03 there in Price Hill. So tell you what, that is our WCPO Game of the Week. We're going to have a lot of coverage for you on that. I have a feature story also going for Thursday, and we'll have a TV story as well, previewing the game on Friday night. But I asked a kind of a poll question of sorts to our WCPO High School Facebook group at the start of this week. And, we're in week 6 right now. And, I had a few questions for our audience. We always get a good discussion there in the Facebook group. But wanted to ask, who is your MVP? Who's your Coach of the Year? Biggest surprise? Most underrated player in Greater Cincinnati? And then for some prediction purposes, just for fun, I asked our group how many teams we're going to have in Canton for the state finals this December. And so got a lot of varied responses, and people kind of chimed in from really all parts of the city and all divisions. This was kind of an open-ended question, which was regardless of divisions. So I want to give you a couple of my thoughts. Nothing scientific here whatsoever, but certainly just some observations from what I've seen on Friday night. Now, obviously, I can only cover one game and be in person at one game on a Friday night, but my MVP right now is Jaton McLean at Fairfield, the senior running back who's going to the University of Kentucky. He has 871 yards rushing and 10 touchdowns, 8.5 yards per carry. He's got over 3,330 yards in his career, and I tell you what, he's just a game changer when you watch him. We talked to his offensive line, 3 of his offensive linemen after that 33-7 win at Lakota West on Friday night, and one of the players told me, he says, "You know what, with Jaton, you just give him a little crease and he just watch him make some magic, because he can do it all. He just needs that sliver of real estate, and he can take it to the house." And he certainly showed that on Friday night against the Firebirds. 5-0 Fairfield for the first time since 2013. They're going to face Lakota East this week in another big-time GMC matchup. Indians certainly don't want to look ahead, but we can look ahead as media members, and certainly that November 1st game, Colerain at Fairfield, could determine the GMC title. But a lot of football to be played. Talk about other Player of the Year candidates. Evan Prater, the University of Cincinnati commit, obviously a Wyoming quarterback. You got to put him right there. Number 2 player in the entire state by 247 Sports in the 2020 class. Matthew Reevy, as we just mentioned, Coach Specht mentioned him. Turpin running back Reese Evans. He has 916 yards rushing and 15 touchdowns this season. Roger Bacon, junior running back Corey Kiner. He picked up an offer from Notre Dame on Sunday, and he needs just 280 yards rushing and 3 touchdowns to become the Spartans' all-time leader in 2 of those categories. He's up for 3 additional categories as well. So when it's all said and done, we certainly are going to have some viable candidates for Mr. Football, and those are just some of the names that you have to talk about. And that's not even talking about Winton Woods senior running back Mayan Williams, who was the runner-up last year, and he may be the most credentialed candidate of them all when it's all said and done. Surprise team. I don't know. Right now, I think it's Turpin. First 5-0 start since 2016. I think if you talk to Coach Kent McCullough and some of the Spartans players, they're not surprised by the start. They defeated Lakota East earlier this season. A lot of people said, hey, that's their signature win, but they are getting the job done right now. And talking to Reese Evans and also senior quarterback Justin Silverstein, we talked to him on the podcast earlier in this season, and they said, hey, from the 6th grade on, we knew this was going to be a special group, and they're certainly showing that right now and getting the job done there. And that's a team that you certainly want to watch in Division II, Region 8. We mentioned Fairfield. And then Wyoming, not a surprise team by any stretch of defending Division IV state champions, but the way they're doing it, they haven't lost in the regular season since October of 2015. You got to give a ton of credit to head coach Aaron Hancock and what he's doing. The 20-game winning streak right now. They've won 36 consecutive regular season games. And they've outscored their opponents 86-14 on the road this season. So not a surprise by any stretch, but the way they're doing it in such dominating fashion, I think you got to give a lot of credit to Coach Aaron Hancock and his staff. A surprise team for me, possibly in that category, Jesse Hubbard and what he's doing at New Miami. First 5-0 start since 1978. We highlighted the New Miami Vikings on WCPO.com last week, and also had a TV story as well prior to Friday night's action. And you got to give Coach Hubbard a lot of credit what he's doing. Took over a program where only had 21 players just a year and a half ago, and is really getting the job done there. Got to watch for them in Division 7, Region 28. And then Roger Bacon. They've moved to the Miami Valley Conference. They're going to face Purcell Marion this Friday night at Brown Basovich Stadium. Both those schools are MVC associate members for football. Moving out of the GCL, obviously everybody knows they were longtime members there. But 4-1, for the first time since 2010. Their best start there. Corey Kiner has a lot to do with it, but senior quarterback Tyler Bullock, got to give a lot of credit to senior defensive lineman James Thompson, who's verbally committed to Wisconsin's got a great story, really persevering and came back from a knee injury last year as well. That's not even to mention what Colerain is doing. 78 consecutive GMC victories. Not a surprise at all, but when you talk about a team of the year that may be under the radar right now, you never think the Cardinals would be, but certainly when you talk about underrated players, underrated teams, I got to think that Deshaun Pace, the senior safety, University of Cincinnati commit, he's not getting the limelight or the spotlight he deserves, because I think he's just a game changer there. And the Cardinals are kind of quietly going about a 4-1 start. Only loss came to St. X 21-14 in week 2, and they host Sycamore, a 3-2 Aviators team this week in another crucial GMC matchup. We're going to have a lot more for you on WCPO.com later this week. Also on Channel 9, we're going to have a preview, kind of a mid-season report card on Friday night as well, and we'll have all the highlights for you on the Friday Night Frenzy late on Friday, and also we're going to have a follow-up story for you on Saturday morning on WCPO.com as well. That's all we have for you this week. We will talk to you next week. Thanks for joining us.